Imagine this. A humble nun living far from the noise of the world notices something so ordinary, so common, that no one else would think twice about it. Yet, in her spirit, she knew it was the quiet trigger of something heaven had already shown her. That nun was Saint Faustina Kowalska, the messenger of divine mercy. In her private writings, which the Church later recognized as extraordinary revelations, Faustina described visions that often began with simple, everyday moments. A gesture, a small action, a habit, and suddenly she would feel the weight of eternity in it. This was not superstition. She wasn't looking for omens in the wind or shadows on the wall. Her gift was spiritual sensitivity, the ability to perceive divine messages hidden inside the most ordinary routines. One of those routines, she believed, was more than just an innocent human habit. It was a signal. A subtle sign that something monumental in God's plan was about to unfold. Here's the part that will make you lean in. She claimed this sign would appear before a prophecy came true. A prophecy about times when mercy and judgment would meet in an unthinkable way. And here's the question you need to ask yourself. Could you be doing this same habit today without realizing its meaning? I'm not saying this to alarm you, but to wake you up. The kind of habit Faustina spoke of wasn't about sin, nor was it something people would consider wrong. In fact, that's what makes it even more dangerous to ignore, because it hides in plain sight. Before we go deeper, I want you to do something for me. Drop a comment right now. Yes, if you have a daily habit you've never questioned before. Because in a moment, we're going to connect what you do without thinking to something Faustina saw with supernatural clarity. And the moment you see the connection, you'll never go through your day the same way again. Saint Faustina Kowalska was not a scholar, not a public preacher, and certainly not someone the world would expect to carry a divine message that would shake nations. She was a quiet soul in the corner of a convent, devoted to prayer, obedience, and a hidden life. Yet, inside that hidden life, God was writing a story so profound that it would echo through the decades after her death. Her diary, Divine Mercy in My Soul, contains not just prayers and reflections, but precise moments when God allowed her to see what no one else could. Often it happened in the middle of something ordinary, kneading bread in the kitchen, sweeping the floor, serving soup to the poor. These moments weren't dramatic by the world's standards, but in her heart, she would hear that inner voice say, "Pay attention." One day, while observing a small, almost unnoticeable action from another sister in the convent, she felt a deep stirring. It wasn't the act itself, it was what the act represented. The Holy Spirit opened her understanding, and she saw it as the same action she had been shown in a vision. An action that, in her visions, came right before a period of trial and grace unlike any other. Imagine knowing that something as small as a repeated gesture could mean heaven was sending a signal. It's like watching a simple candle flicker in the dark, yet somehow knowing it's the sign that a storm is coming. This was not fear-mongering, it was alertness. Faustina understood that God often wraps his messages in the ordinary so that only the watchful will see them. And that's why her prophecies weren't for the curious, they were for the prepared. Take a second and think about your own life. Have you ever felt a strange weight or meaning in something small you saw or did? If so, type "I felt it" in the comments. Because in the next part, you'll see how what she witnessed is not locked in the past. It may be repeating right now in our everyday world. Think about your daily routine. You wake up, maybe grab your phone, prepare breakfast, talk to the same people, drive the same roads, and repeat actions without giving them a second thought. We call it habit, but habits are not just patterns of the body, they are also signals of the soul. Saint Faustina understood this long before modern psychology talked about behavioral cues. She believed that in certain moments, when humanity reached a tipping point between grace and judgment, ordinary habits would take on prophetic meaning. Not because the action itself was mystical, but because it revealed the state of the heart and the direction of the times. What's shocking is how relevant that is right now. We live in an age of constant repetition. The same gestures, the same scrolling, the same words we say without even noticing. It's possible that, without realizing it, you and millions of others are performing the same small action Faustina saw before her prophecy came true. In her time, this habit involved a simple physical act that everyone thought was harmless. Today, its modern equivalent is happening everywhere. In homes, in workplaces, even in churches. And just as she wrote, it tends to appear right before moments of deep spiritual change. This is where it becomes urgent. If the same sign is resurfacing in our generation, we're not just talking about history, we're talking about now. The question is, will we recognize it in time? Pause for a moment and think, is there something you do every day that feels empty, mechanical, or strangely out of place lately? If yes, write "I see it" in the comments. Because in the next section, I'll give you the first clues of this habit, the same one Faustina recognized, and you'll see why it was never as innocent as it seemed. Saint Faustina never rushed to reveal the full meaning of what she saw. She understood that some truths need to settle in the heart before they can be fully grasped. And so, in her writings, she would often describe the scene in pieces, almost like a painter layering colors until the full picture emerges. In this case, the daily habit she observed was so common that no one in her convent thought twice about it. It was something done almost without thought, an automatic reflex of the body repeated every day in silence. But in her vision, that same habit appeared as the opening note to a great and solemn symphony, the beginning of events that would test the faith of many. She wrote of a moment when she saw this action repeated by multiple people in a short span of time, and in her spirit she knew it had begun. The habit was not sinful in itself. What made it significant was the spiritual atmosphere in which it appeared, an atmosphere she recognized from other revelations: urgency, unrest, and a call to prepare the soul. Now here's where it gets unsettling. The modern equivalent of this habit is everywhere today. In fact, it has become so normalized that not only do we not notice it, we often encourage it. And that, Faustina would warn, is exactly why it's dangerous. I'm going to give you a hint. It's something that involves the hands, the eyes, and the heart, but not in prayer. It is done quickly, almost carelessly, and yet it shapes the soul far more than most people realize. If you think you know what I'm talking about, type your guess in the comments. In her diary, Saint Faustina described watching a fellow sister engage in a small, everyday act, touching the Divine Mercy image without reverence, almost absent-mindedly before walking away. To the others, it was nothing. But to Faustina, it was a sign she had already seen in her visions, a sign that hearts were losing awareness of the sacred, even in the presence of holy things. She saw this casual, distracted gesture not as an act of malice, but as a symptom of something far deeper: spiritual numbness. It was the kind of numbness that prepares the ground for prophecy to be fulfilled, prophecy that warned of a time when mercy would still be available, but fewer and fewer would recognize it. Her message was simple yet alarming. When the sacred becomes ordinary in our eyes, the world is closer than we think to crossing a threshold. She connected this habit to a vision in which she saw a short period where heaven's grace was being poured out with urgency, but many walked past it as if it were nothing. Fast forward to today, how often do we handle sacred things, moments, and even people without attention or reverence? It may not be an image on the wall for you. It might be the Bible on your nightstand untouched for weeks. It might be passing by a church without a second thought. It might be rushing through a prayer so quickly that it becomes a checklist instead of a conversation with God. For Faustina, this habit was not the end, it was the warning bell. It was the whisper that the prophecy was moving from the unseen into the seen. Let me ask you this: have you ever caught yourself going through a holy moment without feeling anything at all? If yes, write "Lord, awaken me" in the comments. Saint Faustina lived nearly a century ago, but her warnings read like they were written for this exact moment in history. The habit she observed, that quiet loss of awareness for the sacred, has only multiplied in our time. And here's the unsettling truth: when she saw it spreading in her visions, it was never isolated, it was always accompanied by great shifts in the world. Look around. In our modern life, sacred moments are being drowned out by noise. The glow of a phone replaces the flicker of a candle. Our eyes stay fixed on screens even as we walk past altars, chapels, or places where the presence of God is almost tangible. We rush, we scroll, we multitask, and without realizing it, our hearts start to move in the same distracted rhythm. Faustina wrote that this habit, left unchecked, was like closing your eyes while the sun is rising. The light is there, but you're choosing not to see it. And she warned that a time would come when that choice would have consequences far beyond personal faith. It would be the backdrop for moments when nations would tremble, when heaven's mercy would reach out one last time before justice would speak. This isn't meant to terrify, it's meant to wake you up. Because if her prophecy is in motion, the signs wouldn't appear as dramatic disasters first. They would start quietly in the hidden spaces of daily life. That's exactly why she paid attention to a small, seemingly insignificant habit. Because in the spiritual realm, little doors can open to great events. So here's a challenge for you. Over the next 24 hours, watch yourself closely. Notice every time you pass a sacred image, every time you pray, every time you speak about God, and ask yourself, am I present or am I just going through the motions? If you're willing to do this, write, I will watch in the comments. Because in the final part, we're going to talk about why Faustina believed this habit could also be reversed. And how, if we act now, the prophecy can become a moment of grace instead of fear. Saint Faustina never spoke of prophecy as a fixed, unchangeable fate. She understood something profound. That heaven often reveals what is coming not to condemn us, but to invite us into a moment of mercy before it's too late. That is why, even as she described the daily habit as a warning, she also wrote of hope. In her visions, she saw that those who became aware of their actions, who chose to handle the sacred with reverence again, would find themselves under a special protection. It wasn't about perfection. It was about awakening. Because an awakened heart can read the signs and respond before the storm breaks. This is the part that many people miss. The prophecy wasn't just about a global event, it was about you. It was about whether your heart will be ready when the moment comes, whether it happens in the quiet of your personal life or on the stage of the whole world. We don't know exactly when her prophecy will fully unfold. But if you believe the signs are already gathering, in the loss of reverence, in the distractions that creep into holy spaces, in the way the sacred is treated as common, then this is not the time to stay asleep. Faustina hinted at another sign, one that would appear after the habit had spread widely and before the prophecy reached its climax. She never described it in full detail, only that it would be seen in the sky and felt in the heart at the same time. What that means we can only guess, but perhaps, just perhaps, we are closer to seeing it than we think. So I'll leave you with this question. When the next sign comes, will you notice it or will it pass you by unnoticed just like the habit did for so many? If you want to be among those who see clearly, write, Lord, keep me awake in the comments. And never forget, the smallest actions in your day might be heaven's way of speaking directly to you.